In preparation for our field trip, we will be making a viewfinder, and the viewfinder will help us compose our sketches by framing views within this cutout. It's almost a little viewport to help us decide what to sketch. So the idea is you hold it up in front of you at about arm's length, kind of close one eye and shift it around until you find a nicely composed view. And then you can also use it to help identify where to start your sketch and how to compose it on your sheet. For instance, when you look through the viewfinder holding one eye closed and you see an element that's maybe halfway along the edge of your viewfinder, you know that you also need to sketch it about halfway up the page on your sketchbook. So it's a good reference for finding relationships as well on how to compose your sketches. So to create this, I gave you a piece of chipboard. If you were not able to get a piece of chipboard because you were absent, you could look around your home and find something, maybe cardboard, or if you have like a cereal box that's big enough, you want it to be the same size as your sketchbook. You could even use like a heavy cardstock paper, but you want it to be sturdy enough that you can bring it along to every field trip in the future. So first you want to figure out what is the size of your sketchbook. Mine is 9 by 12, so I know that my sheet is exactly 9 by 12. So that's what I want to cut this down to. So I always start with an anchor point. I'm going to use this bottom left corner as my anchor point. And then you're simply going to measure over 12 inches on the long side and then 9 inches on the short side. Now, ideally you will have a cutting mat, a straight edge, a metal straight edge, and some sort of box cutter or even an X-Acto blade. If you do not have these things, though, I didn't ask you to buy them because we're only using them once this semester. You could also use any kind of ruler and also a pair of scissors. So I'll talk through what that looks like. So as I said, I'm going to measure over the 12 inches, and I'm just going to make a tick mark at 12. So I'm at 0 here, 12 here, and I'm actually going to do that several times up the sheet. At least 3, I would say. And if you have a cutting mat that has the lines and the dimensions, you could use that too, and maybe you don't necessarily need all these marks. But then you can align your straight edge to the marks and make a nice clean cut. Let me move this down. So you always want to hold your metal straight edge firmly. If you don't have experience doing this, I do not want you to cut yourself. So you hold that firmly, and then I've got it on the left side because I am right-handed, so now I can use my blade and press firmly and make a nice clean cut for the 12-inch side. Now, if you do not have your X-Acto blade to do it this way, you can, let's see, I'm going to measure up 9, and I'm going to do the same thing, 9 inches. I'm going to do it 3 times. And then what I would do if I had scissors is I would draw a line connecting these using my ruler. And then with the line, you'll be able to do a fairly nice job of cutting a straight edge on that side. So there's always a way to make do. So next, you're going to draw an X from corner to corner. So you'll just do something like this, draw an X so that you find your midpoint. Now once you find your midpoint, you can make your rectangle 2 or 3 inches. Mine right here is 3 inches. I think that's a good size to work with, especially if you have a larger sketchbook like 9 to 12. if 9 by 12. If it's 8 by 10, maybe you could consider a 2-inch or 2.5. But the way you do that is you're just aligning your ruler with those X's. So see how I've got 3 inches here to here, and then I can draw that line. And then same thing between these two. So don't make it any harder than it needs to be, getting this rectangle in the center. So 3 to 3. And then what should happen roughly is that these, when you connect this side, it should be straight. And again, it'll be much easier to cut this out if you do have your blade, because then I'm not trying to puncture through the material, so I can just cut around. But just make it work with your scissors, because we're using a pretty thin material, so you should be able to kind of punch through and create that opening. So then that'll give you your nice viewfinder here. And then for the composition exercise, we're creating these thumbnails on our sheet. So on site, we're going to be making 8 drawings. You will think about, how many of these will fit on a sheet. So do a little bit of preliminary work to make sure you can align them nicely. And then once it's on the sheet, let me grab this one. Then you can just trace the inside, and that's going to give you your thumbnail to work with. And then you can move it down, put some space between, and sketch out your next one, and so on and so forth. So you want to fit 8 on a page, and then this gives you your framework. So whatever you see through the viewfinder, you're going to draw within these. So you're going to pick 8 different scenes to draw. And remember, we are still working with contour lines. So we're not adding shading, detail, anything like that. We're working with contour lines. So simple, and with the goal of creating nicely composed drawings. Now, you should add watercolor to these. I think it will be good practice to just quickly add watercolor. And I also don't want you to spend a lot of time on each sketch. These thumbnail sketches are meant to be quick. You can often use them to try out a scene before you draw it larger. So we'll be doing that later in future classes. So try 5-10 minutes max for each one. I think you could do this definitely in 5 minutes. So push yourself to quickly find a view, sketch the view, and then move on to the next one, so you're not spending too much time on this sheet.